Someone cooked here.
Kent Hughes continues to cook, as in his press conference post-trade deadline, he revealed something that has Habs fans so excited, as all signs now point to him going for a big move around the draft and even into next season. We have to break down everything he said, plus he revealed the real reason David Savard wasn't moved, and they made a sneaky roster move that really prepares some of their young guys for their futures. Stick around for all of that on this episode of Habs Digest. But guys, as you know, this video is sponsored by Rentals.ca. It's trade deadline. They are proud supporters of the Habs at the trade deadline, and Kent Hughes made lots of moves. And if it's time to move for you, and if you want that excitement like the Montreal Canadiens with something new, hey, it's time to move, and you should check out Rentals.ca. You can rent houses, apartments, condos, whatever you want on Canada's largest apartment hunting network.
Your next home is definitely waiting on Rentals.ca. Website, the best part about it, really clean, really easy to use, very user-friendly. One of the best things about it is it's got some really good maps that are really clean, easy to use, and you're able to really find that perfect part of the city that you've been just waiting to move to and find great listings right there.
Rentals.ca are big Habs fans. They have been proud sponsors of the trade deadline videos here on Habs Digest. So if it's time to move for you, check out Rentals.ca in the description or the pinned comment. They got your back. Jesse, let's dive into this. We want to talk first about a bit of a sneaky roster move that was going down today. And yes, I know there's been so many trades going on in the NHL, some huge ones, some minor ones. The Habs snuck something in here that is quite important, and it's nothing huge, but we gotta mention it anyway. The Habs announced they've papered Jayden Struble and Joshua Roy to Laval to make them eligible to be sent down. Now, basically what this means is that Joshua Roy and Jayden Struble on paper were sent down to Laval and then immediately recalled. And Kent Hughes, while he didn't speak on Struble in his presser earlier specifically, he did mention that Joshua Roy is 100% staying with the team. Now, the reason they did this, Jesse, is that by, I believe it's tomorrow, March 9th, if a player is not on the AHL roster, they are not eligible for the playoffs. And after that March 9th deadline, the parent team in the NHL only has a certain number of call-ups they can use. So if they were to call up Joshua Roy and Jayden Struble after this, that uses 2 of their possible call-ups the rest of the way. But he mentioned it's about a balance, right? Finding what's best for them, whether it's in the AHL or the NHL. And I think it's just it was an expected move, but something that we really love to hear that Kent Hughes and them are seriously considering for these guys' development.
And doing a really good balancing act, right? Because let's face it, both of these guys are playing really well at the NHL level. We had high hopes for them, but they're even surpassing that in a lot of ways. Both Jayden Struble and Joshua Roy, both absolutely deserving to be with the big club. Joshua Roy almost getting 2 goals last night, being a difference maker. Struble is playing a really simple, effective, physically imposing type of game. He's looking just like a real regular here in the NHL, right? But of course, there is so much value to be gained by getting that playoff experience, and just as a whole of your organization of just participating in that and having the best run as possible. And we do definitely have some good players there with the Laval Rocket. They would just be so much better, of course, with Joshua Roy and Jayden Struble. I do feel, however, just with them playing so well, you have to feel like you're Martin St. Louis, especially, in Kent Hughes. It's like, if they're playing well, you're just going to keep them up, right? If they're showing, okay, they can hang at this level, then maybe they're ready as it is, right? Kind of thing. So, but it's always nice to have that flexibility that if it is best for them, to get some good reps and maybe help out Justin Barron there with the Laval Rockets playoff case.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, if they really want him in a playoff race, if Laval makes it to that point, I can understand it as well. But yeah, it seems like the NHL, at least for Joshua Roy for now, is a certainty. Also interesting, they didn't put Xhekaj down. Not surprised by that at all. But again, all indications point that Xhekaj is, well back ahead of Jayden Struble in that pecking order. So yeah, a little sneaky roster move that we figured we'd update you guys on. But I want to talk next a bit about David Savard. My goodness, Kent Hughes had so many juicy tidbits in this interview. Go check it out on the Montreal Canadiens YouTube channel. I probably should have said that earlier, but I'm sure a lot of you guys have watched it already. I watched it live, probably alongside a lot of you fine people. But he said something about David Savard. Now, this is paraphrasing. This is just what I was writing in my notes, so no source here except me. If you don't believe me, go watch the video. So, what he said when you're talking about trades, like, like trades maybe specifically with a guy like Savard, Kent Hughes looks at trades like this. Not everything that the Habs can do can be strictly on maximizing asset value. You have to balance it with what the player brings currently to the team, and then being present and being a good presence. There's value in players' times with Montreal that will extend beyond the time they might be gone from the organization. And he mentioned Savard specifically, and I think this makes a ton of sense, Jesse. I mean, when we saw the retention spot was used on Allen, we knew the Habs were done. It was soon reported that yes, they were indeed done. But with a guy like Savard, and even he mentioned this about Jake Allen, just class guys that will teach lessons that go far beyond just the pure on-ice value of a player. And I just think that mentality, that philosophy around some of these players, like it's something that I think a lot of us maybe take for granted at times. And it's something that I really love to hear from our GM.
Absolutely. And it's the value in this is just because of the culture, right? And it's so nice that he's looking at the other intangibles. And this is why David Savard had such a high price associated with him. We're not opposed to reason. You know, if you're going to give us a crazy return, for sure, we're going to do that. But we recognize what this player has to us. And most importantly, right now, a lot of these trades, they're very time sensitive as well, right? And it's thinking, okay, we got a young team. Is our young guys quite ready to take the next step all by themselves right now? Close, getting there, much better, but not there yet. That's why you put that much more of a value on David Savard, right? And it matters. You know, Guhle's maturing, Xhekaj is maturing, but we've seen those ups and downs, those fluctuations. Until that kind of stabilizes, you know, we're going to need a little bit of that vet support. And David Savard has just been a great pickup to be able to provide that. He's really flourished into, I think, a beautiful role with the Montreal Canadiens, where maybe didn't have the best start, but he has just endeared himself just to the Habs and the fans, you know, so much. He is so loved by his teammates. And I think it's important as a GM, like, you need to recognize this. You don't uproot just key cultural guys as part of your organization, right? And you have to know when the right time for that is. You have to feel like this offseason, we obviously need to address our defensemen just because we have too many, which is a great problem to have. Obviously, we're having some good ones right now in the HL, but you have to feel like we will address this in the offseason. But being patient right now with David Savard, I think is totally the way to go.
Yeah, I've swung my opinion on him over the past year or so. I wouldn't mind if he's a lifer. And while, yes, I understand if you get an offer for a first-round pick for him, that's a hockey trade you probably have to do. But what I'm saying is if you don't get the price that you want, if you're Kent Hughes, keep him around. I don't mind if he sticks around, signs a small contract next season, after next season, just to keep him around the org. He seems like a great fit, a great role model for a lot of the young guys. So shout out to David Savard. Really cool stuff from Kent Hughes. Final thing we got to talk about, though, this is the exciting thing, and all signs point to some big moves happening soon, Jesse. And it was Kent Hughes when asked about, you know, like, what's going to happen if your plan, you know, goes to plan? Like, and if when are you going to come out of that rebuilding phase? When are you going to shift to buyers instead of sellers? Well, here's what he had to say. He said, I look forward to the day we're buying and not selling. The faster it can happen, the better off it is. I want to be around for it. Then he was also asked, how far are you from being buyers if your plan goes well? He said, now this is, I put quotation marks, but it's not a specific quote. It's quite close, but again, go check out the video if you want the full context. We've been buyers at the draft and sellers at the deadline. If we see an opportunity again at the draft, we'll continue down that path. As for the deadline, it depends on our product on the ice. Now again, that's slightly paraphrased, but all signs, Jesse, point to, like, he's like, I want to be a buyer. I can't wait to be a buyer. That's the vibe I got from this. He wants to go out there and get these players that can help the Habs compete. And he said, hey, at the draft, if we get an opportunity, you know we're going for it. And with this stockpile of draft picks, more than 30 picks over the next 3 drafts now, ton of first and second and third rounders, you gotta think something big is coming, and not just for any, like, a random veteran big splash. He was actually wary. You know, you don't want to sign vets to big contracts. He wants a younger guy who, he said, will be around the organization for many years. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting my hopes up, but from what I understood from this conference, Kent is about to continue cooking well into the offseason.
Yeah, he's given a masterclass on right now. He's basically the master chef of the trade deadlines and also just, you know, draft day, right? And we know, you know, he's said he's been seller on that type of date, right? And then it's just waiting now when we're going to be really those buyers at the trade deadline. We're getting there. We're so close, but he's really doing this so well of just being patient. You know, the more you look at it, get a really good draft pick, just maximize on it for this year. Really go to draft day. We got a lot of picks. You have to feel like there's going to be a trade there where we're packaging something to kind of either move up or really get an impact player with those picks while still drafting probably at least 1 to 2, first rounders ourselves, right? So, I mean, and just the fact that we're going to have so many assets to really replenish the ranks year in, year out in the future, I think is really the way to go about it. We're getting there. The way that this team competes, they're not so far away. We're competing with a lot of the best teams in the league right now, while kind of organically trying to, to tank in a certain type of way, right? Just as part of the rebuild. I think to do it right, obviously Kent Hughes hasn't gone out and gotten a bunch of acquisitions to try and make this team. We're really doing the best with what we can, a lot of depth despite some injuries. So I believe just getting a little bit of that help, and then again, a couple of those big swings, and we're going to be in that position before we know it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about this roster next year. We still have like basically everyone in the young core, right? Like, and we still have Dach, who's hopefully going to be back fully healthy. Newhook's still going to be good. Suzuki, Caufield, Slaf, Reinbacher, and Hudson will probably both be on the roster come September, October. Not to mention the fact that the Habs still have that first from Calgary they can dangle. They have a bunch of seconds and thirds that they can package together. And hey, who's to say that they will draft with their first pick in this draft? I think it's a very good chance, especially if there's someone that they really like. But you never know when another team might come calling and it's Montreal's draft position and say, hey, there's a guy we really want at your pick. We're willing to give you one of our top players that's maybe 25 or 26 years old. You never know, right? So there's a lot of stuff that could come, but Kent Hughes has made it clear he's excited and he wants to be the guy that turns this team into a buyer. He said whether that's next season, the season after, we're not sure, but what we do know is that you're going to want to keep an eye out around the trade deadline surrounding the Montreal Canadiens, or not the trade, the draft is what I meant to say. My head's in trade deadline mode. Around the draft if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, because something big might be cooking. And while you're at it, why don't you hit subscribe here, because we're going to have all those news, rumors, updates around the draft whenever Kent decides to actually make a move. And if you don't want to miss anything Montreal Canadiens, this is your spot to be. Thank you for watching this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the video. When we ask you guys to do that, you usually do, and it really helps us out. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.